It is 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. Trump tells Putin to agree a peace deal with Ukraine after 12 people die in a Russian missile strike on Kyiv. Pakistan tells Sky News that tensions over a gun attack in the disputed region of Kashmir could lead to all-out war with India.
The clash between two nuclear powers is always worrisome.
Prince Harry accuses social media firms of failing to block children's access to harmful content. Nigel Farage tells Sky News he's not interested in a coalition deal with the Conservatives. Plus, three Chinese taikonauts blast off in the latest step towards Beijing's plan to put people on the moon. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through until midnight. Good evening. Donald Trump has issued a rare rebuke to Russia today as he sought to keep his efforts to broker a peace deal in Ukraine on track. He told Vladimir Putin to stop and that he was not happy after 12 people were killed in Russia's biggest missile strike on Kyiv in almost a year. But Mr. Trump insisted he was bringing pressure to bear on both sides, warning Ukraine that it would be very difficult for it to regain control of Crimea after its annexation by Russia more than a decade ago. Our Moscow correspondent Ivor Bennett has tonight's first report.
Russia says it's ready for peace, but it has a unique way of showing it. The scale of the attack on Kyiv still brutally clear, even on a laptop. This was the deadliest strike on the Ukrainian capital since last summer. Some were rescued from the rubble, but others were buried, along with, it seems, hopes of a diplomatic breakthrough.
I don't believe in peace because these Shahed drones are definitely not peaceful, and nor are the missiles that are killing us.
Ukraine's president was in South Africa, seeking more international support. But he knows the only support that really matters right now is from Washington.
We believe that with more pressure on the Russian Federation, we will be able to bring our parties closer. In diplomatic language, we will be able to get closer to a complete, unconditional ceasefire.
From Donald Trump, it did provoke some criticism of Vladimir Putin.
I wasn't happy with it, and we're in the midst of talking peace, and missiles were fired, and I was not happy with it. Mr. Prime Minister said,
but that was it. The pressure is still on Ukraine to accept a peace deal that includes ceding claim to Crimea.
That had nothing to do with me, Crimea. That was 11 years ago with Obama. And they made a decision. There wasn't a bullet fired. There was no fighting. There was no anything. They just handed it over. Now they say, well, can you get it back? I think that's going to be a very difficult thing to do.
Russia's senator in Crimea is a chess grandmaster. So is this checkmate to Moscow?
No, of course, it's not checkmate. We are winning, but the situation is complicated, of course, and of course we are not happy basically about the situation, but anyway we hope that we'll find a solution from this, and we have to keep going.
Ever since Donald Trump threatened to walk away from the peace talks, it feels like the Kremlin's been falling over itself to try and show a willingness to make progress. There was the Easter ceasefire, for example, and an offer to hold direct talks with Ukraine. But in reality, Russia is yet to make any concrete concessions. The only thing that's really changed, it seems, is America's position, which has shifted even further in favor of Moscow. Donald Trump claims a peace deal's still afloat, but that depends from where you view things. Ivor Bennett, Sky News, Moscow.
Well, let's go to Washington, D.C. and bring in our correspondent David Blevins for more on this. David, good to have you with us. So is President Trump trying to keep this peace deal alive?
Well, Donald Trump vowed to end this war in a day, so the last thing he wants to do is concede defeat. And that's why we've seen this remarkably personal post online directed at the Russian president, pleading on first-name terms with Vladimir to stop. It's also why we've seen him attempt to balance that by claiming he is putting pressure on Russia, insisting that if he wasn't, Putin wouldn't still be talking. And it's also why we have now seen him focus in on a deadline for the very first time. When asked if he thought there would be a deal, he said yes, but ask me again next week. Now, next week will mark his 100th day in office, a day when his presidency will come under intense scrutiny. But it's still difficult to see what the strategy is, because if he has no favourites, no allegiances, as he says, many will ask why the US peace plan proposes the US recognising Crimea as Russian, because that legitimises the invasion of Ukraine. It places Zelensky in an impossible situation and sets the Ukrainian president up to be the fall guy, to take the blame if Donald Trump can't get this over the line.
Indeed. David, for now, in DC, thank you for that. Well, the Indian Prime Minister has promised to pursue to the ends of the earth those responsible for killing 26 people in the disputed Himalayan region of Kashmir. India has blamed the attack on Pakistan-backed militants opposed to its rule. Pakistan has dismissed the claims, warning that the row could lead to an all-out war. More on that in a moment. First, Sky's Neville Lazarus has travelled to the scene of the shooting in Kashmir and sent us this report.
It's a crime scene that could have global consequences. Families were enjoying their holidays in an off-road meadow in Pahalgam, known as Mini Switzerland, when militants opened fire, killing 26 and injuring dozens. Security forces are still searching for clues.
There is investigation still taking place, and we have been asked to clear out the place, clear out this location because of the investigations.
Soldiers have fanned out across the region in pursuit of the gunmen who have fled into the forests and mountains. The terrain posing a major challenge to search operations.
India will identify, track and punish every terrorist. We will pursue them to the ends of the earth.
India has escalated the diplomatic offensive, revoking visas, expelling military advisors, and putting on hold the Indus Water Treaty. Pakistan retaliated. Prime Minister Sharif called a meeting of the National Security Committee and passed reciprocal measures, and held the suspension of the water treaty would be considered an act of war.
We are fully prepared. If anyone tries to attempt any action, and they've tried it in the past as well, this time around it will be even worse for them.
In the capital, Islamabad, there were demonstrations against India. They mourn at the home of Saeed Shah and offer prayers for 30-year-old Adil. He was working at the meadow when the gunman attacked. He challenged one and tried to grab his gun, giving time for some of the tourists to escape, but paid with his life.
He tried to save the lives of people, be it Hindus or anyone, and I am proud of what he did. But I am sad that he lost his life. It's like a part of me has been cut off, and I feel such pain, but I'm also proud.
Kashmir is the crown over which the two nuclear-armed neighbours have fought wars. And with such hostility and mistrust, there is every chance of an escalation that could be devastating to its people. Neville Lazarus, Sky News in Pahalgam, Kashmir.
Well, in the last hour, Pakistan's defence minister told our Yalda Hakim that the row over the Kashmir shooting could lead to an all-out war between his country and India.
How will you respond if India does launch a series of airstrikes?
We will measure our response to whatever is initiated by India according to that. It would be a measured response, If it's an all-out, attack or something like that, then obviously there will be an all-out war. And if it is something...
And that's what I wanted to get to. We're talking about two nuclear powers. Should the world be worried about this moment?
Yes, I think so. The clash between two nuclear powers is always worrisome.
Well, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have accused social media companies of failing to act to protect children online. Their intervention came as the media regulator Ofcom confirmed firms are to face big fines if they fail to block children's access to harmful content. Our science and technology reporter Mickey Carroll reports.
That's a nice photo of Mia.
4 years ago, Mariano's life was changed forever.
I was the dad of Mia, who passed away on the 12th of March 2021. You need to understand when this happened to you, it's, the whole world is on the floor.
14-year-old Mia was being bullied online, and since her death, Mariano has been campaigning for children to be better protected on the internet.
Young kids, they used to have access to things that we never imagined. Because of the use of algorithms, they were constantly looking for this subject. Even if they are not looking, they will receive the information.
Sadly, there are hundreds of families like Mariano's. At a protest outside Meta's offices in New York, British families joined other bereaved parents who say social media contributed to the deaths of their children and demanded more accountability from social media companies. A memorial to their children, unveiled by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, made it clear just how much they had lost. The Prince, a father of two himself, called for change. While social media companies claim to be taking action, most still withhold critical data from grieving parents, data that could provide answers and accountability. Social media is quietly taking our children, and those with the power to make change are failing to act. But now Ofcom has released rules to try and turn the tide on online harm. From July, tech companies will be held responsible for looking after their youngest, most vulnerable users. Sites that host pornography, self-harm, suicide or eating disorder content must have age verification tools. This could be through facial age estimation technology, photo ID matching or credit card checks. Algorithms will need to filter out harmful content from children's feeds and give greater controls to block connection requests and comments. Failure to comply could lead to fines of up to £18 million, or 10% of qualifying global revenue, or in extreme cases, court orders banning access to a site in the UK. But while that may sound feisty, social media experts aren't convinced it'll force companies into action.
We've been working with this kind of paradigm and measurement of, we're just going to find them, and we're finding them in, tens of millions or even hundreds of millions. That doesn't deter these companies. They continue to do these harms. We need other mechanisms. We need to be more creative and innovative in how we deter these companies.
For the many families already devastated by harmful content on the internet, these rules are simply too little, too late. Mickey Carroll, Sky News.
Now, the Chancellor has called on the international community to reduce trade barriers as she continues efforts to agree an exemption for the UK from some of Donald Trump's tariffs. Earlier this month, his administration imposed a 10% import levy on British goods, as well as a 25% charge on British-made steel, aluminium and cars. Our business and economics correspondent Gurpreet Narwan reports now from the port of Baltimore, where hundreds of thousands of vehicles are imported into the US every single year.
They know what rupture looks like here in Baltimore. When a ship crashed into a major bridge last year, the port ground to a halt. Workers had no cars to roll off and no containers to unload. But now, it's come back to life.
Just look at the size of these. They're ship-to-shore cranes. They're 200 feet tall, and they're picking up those red and yellow containers weighing up to 50 tons. Inside, everything from shoes and toys to microwaves and fridges. This is where they dock before making their way to the American consumer. About 46 million tons of cargo passed through Baltimore Port last year. It really is one of those places where America meets the world.
We are looking at the Seagirt Marine Terminal in Baltimore Harbor, Maryland. Every 2 minutes, a container is landing on a truck.
Now another uncontrollable agent is on the move, Trump and his tariffs.
We had the COVID episode, and then we had the bridge collapse. It is difficult because we are a major port.
And now we've got Trump's tariffs. Have you seen any difference here? Has anything changed since that's all been playing out? Are you still waiting to see what happens?
I think everyone's waiting to see what happens.
If you're driving a car in the US, it's probably passed through the port of Baltimore, including these, Jaguars and Land Rovers from Britain. Possibly the last we will see for a while. Hit with a 25% tariff on its exports, the company, JLR, has now paused its shipments to the US. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, wants to see that tariff slashed, and she will be making the case to her counterpart, Scott Bessent, in Washington.
Our next guest is also looking at the future of Europe's security and defense spending. So for more, let's welcome in Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves.
Well, first of all, I absolutely understand the concerns the United States have about imbalances in trade in the global economy. We don't always agree with the policy prescriptions, and we're seeking a deal that reduces the trade barriers between our countries. But I am confident that a deal can be done.
Allies to work with us.
And softer notes from the Americans too. The Treasury Secretary now calling for reform rather than a total upending of the world economy. It's enough to give politicians hope that the system we've built will endure.
I believe the levels of globalisation that are there at the moment, I'm more optimistic than some may be, that the high level of trade and global integration that we have in place, that the majority of it will still be intact in the time ahead. What I think is very possible is the structure of that globalisation could begin to change.
But wherever this road ends, the turbulence of the past few weeks have taken their toll on markets, economies, and relationships. Yes, the world is thinking differently about China, but it's thinking differently about the Americans too. Gurpreet Narwan, Sky News, Washington.
Well, Nigel Farage has rejected the idea of Reform UK entering into coalition with the Conservative Party. His intervention came after Sky News obtained a leaked recording of Robert Jenrick, who lost out to Kemi Badenoch in the Tory leadership race, suggesting the right should unite to defeat Labour.
He wasn't in Prime Minister's questions, and I was leaving after PMQs and saw him entering the Palace of Westminster. Brand new suit on, all but I think he'd been to Savile Row. And I said to him, are you on a Ozempic, Robert? I mean, he's clearly shaping himself up to be the next leader of the Conservative Party. He doesn't care what internal division he causes within the Parliamentary Party, but he's actually mistaken. We are not going to do a deal with a Conservative Party that gave us record tax levels since the war, mass migration. I mean, I could go on.
Bring our chief political correspondent John Craig, who's in Westminster, for more on this. Good evening to you, John. So what, is that it? No deal between Reform and the Tories?
Well, no deal between now and a week today, when, of course, it's the local elections and some important mayoral elections where the Tories and Reform are fighting each other like tooth and nail and hand-to-hand combat, you might say. If you thought that was pretty rude from Mr Farage about Robert Jenrick, he went on to call him Robert Generic, Robert the Remainer. He was absolutely scathing, and he talked about how he questioned whether he was genuine or not. When our colleague Sam Coates asked what he meant by that, he talked about how some politicians are there through conviction, and then there are those who are there because they want to reach rank and position and all that comes with that. Well, Mr Jenrick, of course, is not the only person suggesting some sort of alliance. The Mayor of Tees Valley, Ben Houchen, a senior local government figure in the Tory party, has said in response to Mr Jenrick's intervention revealed by Sky News, there needs to be a coming together on the right to fight the left. Now, as for Kemi Badenoch, she has responded by rejecting calls from the Tories' opponents to sack Mr Jenrick for disloyalty. She said they had a very good conversation. He's a valued member of our team. He works very hard. He's holding the Labour's feet to the fire. Well, Obviously, there are elections a week or so away, a week today, and the Tories are probably going to get a drubbing. We don't know yet whether the Reform UK party will do as well as they're doing in opinion polls. But of course, if Reform do inflict damage and Labour doesn't do quite so badly, there will be more calls for this sort of cooperation. In the past, people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, currently out of Parliament, Esther McVeigh, and other pretty high-profile Tories have said there's got to be some sort of accommodation between the parties. But so far, Mr Farage, of course, is flatly refusing any deals. That's because he's confident, of course, that he's going to do well next week. But if the Tories get a real drubbing and Reform do well, expect more calls for some sort of cooperation from the Tories. And of course, Mr Farage will have to weigh up whether he keeps talking about his ambition to be Prime Minister. He said in one interview there's a 45% chance of that. He'll have to weigh up whether he's helped by some sort of deal with the Tories or not. At the moment, he's pretty confident and thinks he can do better by going it alone.
Okay. John Craig for now in Westminster. Thank you for that. Now, 3 Chinese taikonauts were on their way to the country's Tiangong space station after a successful rocket launch this morning. It marks another step towards China's aim of a crewed mission to the moon within 5 years. Well, the crew took off from the launch centre in the middle of the Gobi Desert. Asia correspondent Helen Ann Smith was there and sent this report.
In the Gobi Desert, they were ready. China's space program surging forward.
Wow, the force of that is just immense. Even from out here, all this way, we can really feel it reverberating through your body. There's a real sense of how China wants to show us, to my extent, and the rest of the world, what it can do.
The 3 taikonauts aboard en route to China's space station, a routine rotation underpinned by much broader ambition. Just a few hours earlier, crowds gathered to wave them off. 3 men who are heroes here. Indeed, this whole event has been lined with pure and unashamed pride. Space, a nationalistic endeavour.
Yes, China #1.
And just listen to the crew's commander. This is not about him, but his country.
Carrying with us the blessings of our country and people, a firm determination to accomplish our mission, the desire to re-enter space and the support of our teammates, we will courageously journey forward into the vast universe.
They won't say it out loud, but everyone here knows the context. An escalating global standoff with America, a superpower race for results.
Are you optimistic that it will be China, the next country to put a man on the moon?
We are now in the middle of the intense development towards the manned lunar landing. We are going to achieve our goal according to our plan.
Indeed, China's space station is a symbol of its surging success. It has also landed a rover on Mars, and it is the first country to have returned samples from the far side of the moon. And its ambitions are broader still. China has Mars in its sights, simulated here in the Gobi Desert.
This is more like outside the Mars environment.
Mars landscape.
And this is where astronauts will live in this Mars base.
This centre for students and tourists imagines how a Mars base could be. China does want to be the first to harvest and return samples, a truly groundbreaking feat.
As a Chinese person, I would be very proud. There is no doubt. But what's more important is no matter who brings the sample back, it will promote the scientific and technological development of mankind.
But experts say space is rarely just a scientific endeavour, and China is thinking long-term.
As space is getting increasingly more accessible, more satellites being put up there, that also enhances the military and defense capabilities of nation states.
That is why the US is watching China closely. It may still have the lead in space, but China is closing the gap. Helen Ann Smith, Sky News, in Jiuquan, northern China.
Now, police in France say that a student has been killed in a knife attack at a secondary school in Nantes. Three other pupils were injured in the incident. Police say they do not suspect a terrorist motive, adding that the attacker, thought to be a 15-year-old, was overpowered by teachers before the police arrived. Pope Francis's doctor says that the pontiff didn't suffer when he died. Dr. Sergio Alfieri said he was alerted at 5:30 a.m. on Monday morning that the Pope's condition had worsened and found him breathing normally but unresponsive. It was deemed too risky to transfer him to hospital, and Pope Francis died 2 hours after falling ill. Well, the former US President Joe Biden has confirmed he will attend Saturday's funeral. The government says that prison officers in young offenders institutions will start using pepper spray from the summer to deal with an increase in violent incidents. The move comes after new figures showed rates of assaults on staff were 14 times higher than at adult prisons. Now, a woman who was thrown out of the world's most famous magic society after revealing she'd tricked members by disguising herself as a man to gain entry has been invited to rejoin. Sophie Lloyd was kicked out of the Magic Circle more than 30 years ago when it was male only. She's been speaking to Sky's Katie Spencer.
How did one woman fool the most famous magic society on the planet? An act of illusion to trick the Magic Circle, an exclusive group that includes David Copperfield and Dynamo amongst its members. It used to be men only, but months before women were allowed to join, one infiltrated its ranks. This is her story.
In 1991, teenager Raymond Lloyd was one of the Magic Circle's rising stars. His greatest trick being that he was actually a she. More than 30 years ago, Sophie Lloyd infiltrated the society half a year before it voted to let women in.
I did the magic in gloves, which was so hard to do, especially sleight of hand with gloves is very hard. And I had to obviously feign a bad voice.
Right, that was the key, was it? You had a cold or something?
No, I suppose say about my throat, I've got laryngitis.
After the Circle announced it was changing its men-only rule, she made her big reveal and, somewhat ironically, they kicked her out. The idea was actually born out of a double act. Sophie, who was in fact an actor, only got her hands on a membership certificate after magician Jenny Winstanley, who sadly died a few years ago, invented the idea of Raymond.
We got a letter that said, you know, where he'd been expelled. Jenny was hurt, and then she was snubbed by the people she actually knew. So that was hurtful. However, things have really changed now.
Sophie had actually never done any magic before she met Jenny, who had wanted to join the Circle herself, but recognised that it would probably only work with a much younger woman posing as a teenage boy. And really proof of how convincing it was came in the Circle's response when they found out members were incandescent about the deception.
More than 3 decades later, the Circle has tracked Sophie down to apologise and reinstate her membership.
They've made good of something that was wrong, and that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Even today, only 5% of the Magic Circle members are women. And while the original justification for men only was that women just can't keep secrets, Sophie, or should that be Raymond's story, perhaps suggesting it was the men here back then who could have done with keeping quiet. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in our press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the political commentator Tim Montgomery and the journalist and author Rachel Shavi. Thanks, guys, for being with us. Among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Daily Telegraph. Its headline, Starmer challenges Trump peace plan. Stay with us. We'll be right back.